Now I would normally work a lot larger than this because you've got that huge sheet of 15 by 20 paper that you could totally do a different flower for each one. But gesture, think about your drawing classes. You want the big blocked in shape first. You want to figure how far down is this? This is 1, 2, it's a little bit less than a third. So if I'm using this whole page without a border, and I can put a border too, I guess I could put a border here. Now since this picture is a little more rectangular than it is square, I would make my border a little bit more narrow. No need for a grid as long as you eyeball the general width. If you're worried about it, you can measure this, how it printed on the printer, and then duplicate it or double it or have it, just so you have it. But I feel pretty comfortable with this. And now I'm going to use this pencil light and loose upside down, very barely holding it, which is very gestural. And I can match the angle of this. This thing in the back is important, but it's very faded and weird and far away. I may not want to incorporate that bright of a yellow, green, and green. I don't feel that it would support this. There's a little tie-in green to green. I don't know, I'll think about it later, but I just want to use this as an opportunity to help draw that. So even if I do it harder than it is in terms of pressure, there's this directional angle. Sorry for the barking. The neighbors has a guy over there and the dogs are freaking out. Okay, so see now I'm getting kind of a thing here, kind of like a frog shape. The frog shape ends about here, so I need to lower this a little. I'm just getting started on my observation. This is too low. See how I'm making a big mess, and you can smear it. It helps to add value as you draw. But I'm not going to erase. I'm going to just keep building, and when I feel like I'm getting a little bit closer, I'll start adding different colors just because I prefer to work that way. See, now I'm getting this curve, and all of this is to avoid the grid. The grid can be pretty stiff, but it's absolutely okay. It gets everything on there in the right spot. You're still going to do this part anyway, but it's just more challenging to do as if you were drawing a figure or still life that you couldn't print. I'm using basic shapes to do. So I basically used this to help me start getting to this. And it's further over than I have it, so I'm just going to fill this so I know that I have it over too far. You know, with gesture, kind of the more messy, the better. It's kind of like when you draw a circle, if you go like that, it's so much better than going like that, because we're human and you can't get it right the first time. So this is my negative space. I don't even need to fill it all the way. I can smear it, whatever. Not erasing, but just smearing, because this thing's all dirty anyway. And then you can see in the corner there's a dark, little things like that. Now I can start figuring out where this thing is. It goes from over here clear down to about here, and then it comes all the way over to here. That's a little funky of a moment. I'd probably leave a little gap there for that. But the color was just so cool. So you want to do a big, loose placement of where this thing is and how much space it occupies. And I'm going to use these geometric shapes to block out the sides of this octagon. What you want to do when you have an angle like that, or like over here, is take your pencil and literally roll it over. From this angle, roll it over to see where this is. People always get the angles off. Another way is put it there and carefully carry it over there. Or you can put a piece of tape. There's lots of ways. Or you can extend the line and kind of draw in the air. That's really important. Structure is everything, and I can't ever emphasize that enough. I feel like the biggest weakness everybody has that I've seen moving forward from, you know, a 2-year program into a longer program, or even any kind of drawing situation, is the problem is structure. It's just like figure drawing. Everything is basic objects. That's why we start with still life always in art and build onto other subjects, but the subjects are the same thing. They're still basic objects. So you can see I'm kind of working on these angles and extending them, because extended lines are what gives you accuracy, because now you can compare where things hit in relation to each other. Okay, so up here on this little edge I have a leaf coming up here. Now if I start getting too involved with each little leaf, it's going to get completely out of whack and not structural anymore. So now I'm going to break it down to a different size. I don't want to get too small. And again, you can see how I'm kind of building around, whoops, and into this. Just to move this a little so you can see a little better. Kind of get the idea, but that's better. So I'm kind of comparing, and then if you get up a lot, tape them both to the wall and look, you can really see what's off. I'm going to divide this in half, as you would like doing a portrait or an elliptical object. Because this looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like an octagon or a hexagon or something like that. I forget what they call those, but I'm going to put a dot everywhere I see this thing end. And I'm going to connect them. Almost like a pie. It's just an idea I just had, and I think it's a really helpful one. It also tells me that this thing is a octagon. Interesting. All right. Well, now I know this angle is similar to this angle, and I'll start with this big area, which is like a huge part of it. The size of from the middle to the bottom is way taller than the size from the middle to the top. So if I have the middle in here, I don't want to have this way down here. I want to have this area large. So remember, try not to draw individual flowers. If it really gets out of hand, if you really feel like it's just weird looking, make a grid and just get yourself set up before you get to this part. Ultimately you will though, because things move, but it just might be helpful. Now I'm trying to get the movement, the direction of these things, and anything I can do to help myself, I will. And in fact, I just found a way to help myself. There's a strange little gray gravelly area. It's mushy and hard to see, but in that area there's a little bit of space around that if I fill it, it'll help me figure out where those petals fall. And it goes swoops like this. This is an opportunity to grab another pencil color. See this little area, even though it's not blue, I'm going to use blue because I have blue, and fill it. If you have a scratch print that, for example, it's helpful if you print it in black and white and draw it first and then print it in color. That way you won't get this messy and you can get it out when you're ready to start doing your painting. But if I had a crappy black and white print, whatever, just a scratch paper or one for grid or whatever, I would actually take this pencil and fill it over here too, just like you would on a grid when you're looking at shapes. Now I can compare this shape with this shape, and I can go, okay, all right, is that all right? Well, it's not perfect, but it's close. And then I see that this thing comes here and it's almost directly in the middle, so I can kind of measure this way. You don't always need a ruler. You can use something like this. So this is slightly right of center based on what I just did. And then you've got this swoopy thing. And again, if you're careful about the scale and getting the paper to match the picture and scale, it'll be helpful. Because this thing now sticks out here. Okay, so we've got this big area here, and then we have this kind of the center of the flower type shape here, and then it kind of emanates like this. So I'm getting to know the way that it moves. And then there's some lines that help me see how things stick out. There's one kind of here, and there's one here, and then the motion of this petal and the motion of this petal. So really what's happening here is sort of a beach ball with a fountain on the top. And that's where everything really is, just spheres and basic objects and negative space. That little piece right there I could fill in right here. So I could continue drawing now with blue, and then I could switch to another color, but I'm not quite there yet because I haven't done enough with the regular pencil. I've got this point here, I've got this red thing here, I've got the ledge is a little bit wider on the edge than I have it. This petal here. So again, flowers are very tricky because they're puzzles. I mean, everything's a puzzle, but you sometimes even have to count how many leaves there are. Like if you were doing drawing a screwdriver and a screw, and the screw had little wraps around it, you'd have to count how many there were to get it to look accurately. It's not something you can really fake. And again, if you feel like you're just winging it and it's not looking right, just go back to the grid and carefully draw it so that you don't end up with the wrong amount of flowers even. This is a very complex selection, but the color is so dynamic to me, I had to do it. I just had to do it. Here's another example right there of, I can fit the blue and see how it falls around this. Kind of using blue where the white is in this case. And if this was scratch paper, I'd fill that too. I just don't want to ruin it because I really like the way that color came out on the printer. I was really surprised. This also shows me now I might need to adjust this, etc. Because one thing leads to another, and you're better off getting bigger as you go than smaller, because things tend to get smaller as you go. It just is just the way it goes. So keep getting bigger as you draw so that it doesn't shrink over time. It's like a lot of people start a portrait and then it becomes this tiny little head when it started out this large oval shape. And then, you know, another thing you can do is draw through things. Like get that general size. Imagine how big that petal would be if you drew through it. And now I'm starting to count. I'm like, okay, how many are there? I'm starting to have a relationship with this. Very, very slowly. And of course, take lots of breaks. And see how I'm just adding more value, more pressure, instead of erasing? That's what gesture is. This is called an organizational drawing. You can never have enough reiteration. I mean, it's not a drawing class, it's a painting class, but drawing is basically painting is drawing with paint. Even when you get into more abstract techniques. Still want to have a solid foundation. And then I always keep a little pencil sharpener on hand so I can keep going like that. But there's a similar demo when you do one of your other projects. Again, it's not the subject that matters. It's the technique and the accuracy. And you can always use value. For example, this is dark. You can use value to measure. People think value is just for depth or texture or whatever, volume. This is actually a tool for drawing. By starting to block in these values on these chocolatey leaves down there, I can start seeing the shapes and if they're accurate and adjusting them. And again, if it's off, reach for another color. You know, when you exhaust the blue, reach for a red. And you can double check. And little by little, you're going to start getting more comfortable and committed to the lines that you made. And you'll be able to draw these and then transfer them onto your paper. Or you feel comfortable enough to lightly transfer visually this to another paper. There's something about having drawn it before that makes it a little bit better. And again, a lot of watercolorists, real professional ones, still use carbon. So don't beat yourself up if you have to draw, and then get a piece of carbon paper to transfer it. Nothing wrong with that. But at least this step you avoid the grid and just use it as needed. And I will continue this until it's rendered, and then I will transfer it, and then I'll do some techniques. Or at least some of it I'll transfer so you can see. But I think that's enough. All right, so that's it. And you're gonna do that for all 3 floral projects. And you could even, if you wanted to, and you're having a good drawing day, you could draw them all. You could draw all 3, transfer all 3, get it all out of the way, and just sit down with your palette. That would be a cool approach. You know, if you're really in the mood to draw and you're doing well that day or that week, that way the drawing part is resolved and you can move on to these really cool techniques and color systems. See you soon.